Welcome to Social Media Masters, the show about creators who have become leaders in their industries by growing a following on social media. From Instagram to TikTok, LinkedIn to YouTube, we will discuss their stories and what made them social media masters. I'm your host, Isaac Child. What's up, David? I'm super happy to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Good. Well, David, I'm a longtime follower. I mean, I don't know exactly when I started following you, but I'm a big fan of your content. You've inspired me in many ways. I even I tried to dress up a little bit, wore a Banana Republic sweater. I'm wearing a watch instead of my Apple Watch. I ditched it just for this episode.
I like it. Look great.
Learning from the best, trying out some new things, and I just got my new Killshot shoes.
Oh, there you go. That's a new colorway. I haven't seen those in person yet, but they look good.
They are very clean, so I'm excited to get wearing those. So I know you've inspired lots, but you're speaking to one that you've inspired well. So I really like your stuff. But
thank you. That's awesome.
Before we jump into the fashion and kind of like what you're known for, I wanted to talk about like before all of that. Tell me about you. I know that some of your content you like to use like before photos of things that you used to wear and kind of your old like high school or growing up what you used to wear. But aside from fashion, just like who is David?
Yeah, great question. So most of my kind of, I guess, growing up life was around golf. And I actually played golf in college at Boise State. And so really from the age of about 10 until 22, that was most of what like consumed my life, and it was a great season. Obviously, getting to play a sport at the collegiate level was amazing, and I think I learned a lot of lessons in that season of my life. But one of the things that it actually also did was I always was into like the golf fashion side of things as well, and so I would wear things that some of my friends would give me a bad time about, or that were just maybe pushing the envelope a little bit. In hindsight, probably didn't always look great, but it was definitely something that I always was into and was aware of, maybe on a broader level than most of my peers or most people my age. I remember even in college, like often picking out the team uniform for the day or things like that, just because it was something that I always prioritized. But that was a huge portion of my life, going all the way from kind of elementary school through college. And then I met my wife, and she started a wedding photography business, and I quickly jumped in because I realized if I wanted to see her on Saturdays or Sundays throughout the summer, that was my best chance of doing that. And so I had honestly never picked up a camera, had no idea what I was doing, but learned just through some on-the-job training, and that is what we've been doing for the last 7 years. And so we are, I guess, kind of serial entrepreneurs. Between the two of us, we have 3 businesses at the moment. And so we're always looking for ways to continue to diversify our life, but also find ways to pursue the things that we're passionate about through business, and also through the things that business can kind of bring on that front as well.
Yeah. So did you graduate from Boise State?
I did graduate from Boise State, yeah.
And what did you study there?
I studied just general business. So we kept it, at first, I studied general business with a emphasis in like human resource management, because my dad was an attorney, and I thought I was potentially going to try to do like human resource law and go to law school. And I graduated from college and decided I don't want to do any more school. I don't want to study anymore. I want to do something different with my life. And so graduated in business, but to some degree have, I guess, used my business degree, but for the most part, entrepreneurship is kind of unique in the sense that a lot of what we learned in college doesn't necessarily apply. And so it was a great season of life, but now it's all about figuring a lot of it out on your own when you're more of a solopreneur entrepreneur.
Absolutely. So you talked about learning photography, doing that with your wife. You said you had a couple other businesses. What are those, and when did those start?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, our photography business is still like rocking and rolling. It has been our main thing for the most part. At the beginning of last year, I started creating content with honestly no expectation of it being a business. It was just a hobby, something fun that I wanted to do, some friends encouraged me to do. But that did quickly turn into something that was monetizable. And so that's one of the businesses. And then my wife is also actually a social media manager for small businesses. And so a lot of our life revolves around this space. We, obviously have had a social media, Instagram for the most part, for our photography business for the last 7 years. And Instagram has changed drastically in the last 7 years, but that space has always been very familiar to us just because it was a necessity of business throughout the last 7 years, especially a local business that's very photo heavy. It just has been a really great tool.
Yeah. So my focus today, what I want to talk to you about, it sounds like there's a number of things that we could branch off and talk about. Your wife being a social media manager, you guys having your photography account, which, if you don't mind me asking, has that grown quite a bit over the last 7 years as well?
Yeah, I think it's obviously different because the content that I create from a fashion standpoint is applicable to truly anyone. And our photography business is very regional. It's very we are in the Northwest of the United States. And so most of the people who our content applies to is that. And so I think we have somewhere around 5,000 followers on our photography Instagram as well. But obviously some of those people, we used to create, not quite as much anymore, but we used to create just a lot of funny reels or things like that. And so we would pick up some followers from all over. But a huge portion of our following is local clients, local vendors, people in that region, because it is just so much more area specific as opposed to something like a personal brand that is kind of applicable to anyone all across the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that number is still fantastic, especially for a regional brand. That's definitely enough to gain a lot of traction and get, consistent clients and stuff for that. Sure. So that's awesome. So you mentioned that your friends kind of encouraged you to get started doing this. Was this something that you had wanted to and you were talking about and they were like, just go for it? Or did they kind of plant the idea in your head?
Yeah. So I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, I started a little kind of side Instagram page where I didn't even use my name. I was just going to kind of anonymously post some fashion stuff on Instagram. I think it was before TikTok. TikTok was probably Musical.ly at the time.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know that TikTok was a thing. But ultimately what kind of got the better of me was I was, 23 years old. I wasn't as secure in myself as I am now. And I just was embarrassed. And I posted a handful of times and then was like, you know what, this isn't for me. Too vulnerable. A few people that I knew in real life found the account and I shut it down. I was like, no more. And in hindsight, obviously, I wish that I had continued that because I can't imagine the growth and the things that I would have learned over the last 5 years had I continued that. But everything I think happens in the time that it does for a reason, all of that. And so it was always this idea in the back of my head that, oh man, maybe there is something here. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I'm passionate about. And so, but I had shelved it. I wasn't going to do anything with it. I wasn't going to, put any energy or time or attention into it. And we were actually in Hawaii with a couple of our best friends. And in December of 2022, and we were in Lululemon, and my friend's wife is super into fashion, and it is just not his jam. He just doesn't enjoy it. It's not something that he finds himself gravitating towards naturally. And so he asked me, because he knew that it was something that I did care about, to show him a couple of pieces, a couple of things that he might look good in or that he might like. And as I was just breaking down a few really basic concepts, he was like, man, you need to make content about this. You need to put it on the internet. You need just this simplicity that I think is still kind of part of my brand today. He very early on was like, this is kind of your market. This is your niche. And so they encouraged me to do that. And I posted a couple in December because that was when we had gotten home. But really in January of 2023, I made it a goal and committed to posting on TikTok every single day in the year 2023, some sort of men's fashion content. And I think that was a really awesome goal to start with. I failed it, but that's okay. I probably posted 300 times in 2023, which was 300 more than I ever thought that I was going to, or than I would have if I didn't have that goal. But initially, I do think I went like 3 months posting every single day. And then, we had trips or other business things or things like that that got in the way. But that was kind of the initial push. And at first, I especially was just like, man, there's no way this is going to go anywhere. Nobody's going to care what I have to say, or and a lot of it is so simple that it was not something that I expected to take off the way that it has, but it was truly just encouragement from a couple of friends, from my wife to go ahead and put myself out there again and give it a shot.
I love that. So aside from the goal that you had to post every single day, when you were getting started, I know you mentioned this is a passion of yours, but like what kept you motivated when you were in your first 100 followers and weren't seeing like a ton of success, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I am a super firm believer in all areas of my life in accountability. And if you had told me to just do it on my own and no one was going to be there to hold me to it, I wouldn't have continued, to be completely honest. And so it really was like, I remember specifically one of these friends, it was like 7 p.m. on the 20th day of me posting. I had 100 followers, whatever. And she texted me and was like, where's your content for today? Like it was really that like accountability for me early on that really just set the tone and made me make sure that I was going to show up every single day to do it. And obviously with other businesses, with other things going on, it wasn't always easy. I remember like laying in bed one day with, my little ring light and making a really simple green screen piece of content just so that I had something to post that day. And so it was just truly people around me stepping in and being like, you said you were going to do this and now you need to do it. And I was fortunate enough, thanks to the way that social media has gone, specifically TikTok, that virality is such a thing. And I was fortunate enough to not be in that space of 0 to 100 for very long. It was a quick build. And so then you do get some excitement around, oh my gosh, like I have 2,000 people who are following me on TikTok. And there is a rush and a high that comes with a video. At first it was like 20,000 people saw this video. That's unbelievable. And then it was 100,000, and then it was 500,000. So there are these little, I guess, milestones that kind of help you push and continue. But at the end of the day, at the very beginning, that 0 to 100 phase, it was truly having other people in my life speaking into my life and being like, hey, you said you were going to do this. Let's see you continue to show up.
That is incredible advice. I think for solopreneurs and for people who are trying to grow on social media, a lot of times we kind of think we have to do it alone, right? Because it's our face, it's our, responsibility to be the one showing up. But having people around you, I think that's a great piece of advice for somebody who maybe isn't feeling that motivation. And you did mention that you had some pretty quick success that helps, and I can account for that too. It's so true that when you get those like videos that go a little bit more viral, or you start to see the number of followers go, it's like that day is easy to make some content. It's exciting. You're ready to potentially get another one like that. But I think accountability, that's a great piece of advice there. So that's awesome. Did you start originally on TikTok and Instagram like at the same time? Was there one platform that you favored over the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe, if I remember right, the first about month I was exclusively doing TikTok. Again, TikTok felt a bit more like the Wild West in that it was harder for friends to find me. It was harder for all that. And so there was still obviously some of that insecurity, showing its ugly head. But over time, I think about a month in, I was encouraged to post on Instagram as well. And so I did start an Instagram. Honestly, the first probably 4 months of Instagram, because I had already kind of built a month's worth of following on TikTok, and Instagram was in kind of a weird place about a year ago where there really wasn't a lot of traction for newer accounts and stuff like that. I was much more consistent on TikTok, and I would post a couple of my good TikToks from the week as reels, and 100 people would see it, and I was like, why is this getting 100,000 on TikTok and 100 on Instagram? And so it definitely was like a lot of my focus initially was on TikTok, and Instagram was just kind of a side platform. But over time, again, part of it was just deciding that I was going to show up on Instagram as well. But then I did get some traction on Instagram, and with traction comes encouragement to continue. And so it was helpful. I also found that some of the tools on Instagram make it a lot easier to kind of connect with your audience and connect and feel like relationship than it is on TikTok. The TikTok DMs are a little clumsy, and the Instagram DMs are like super sharp and super streamlined, and that's great. There are some tools with like posting links and things like that that make it a lot easier for my audience to shop the items that I'm talking about or different things like that. And so I've definitely, while it started completely with TikTok, I've definitely grown an affinity for Instagram for different reasons, for, you know, on kind of both ends.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of the things that are a little bit different and maybe more geared toward the business that you're building for Instagram. But initially, like, did you have much of a strategy like that was very different from TikTok to Instagram? Or was it like you mentioned, oh, I already had some TikTok content, I'll post those as reels and kind of just, you know, repurpose that content?
Yeah. Initially, it was 100% repurposing. It was just like post whatever I posted on TikTok, I'll post to Instagram. I would actually say over time, as I've gotten a bit more familiar with both platforms, I have done more of, hey, I'm going to create platform specific content because I've just noticed what seems to resonate a bit more. TikTok in particular is very controversy heavy and is very save and share heavy, as well as watch time. Whereas Instagram, I think that it's not more positive, but sometimes it's a bit more of like a happy, positive place. And so you can get away with some stuff that's a bit more showing your personality or with a more positive tone instead of always having to say, you know, spout off hot takes or things like that.
Yeah. And I know what you mean about like positivity, negativity. And I think a good thing, especially about your account, is whether it is, you know, how you feel about each platform, you're constantly bringing things that are uplifting, I feel, you know, to the platforms. And so I think for any creator like who might feel a little bit more like, oh, I feel like I'm always having to spit hot takes and do different things that like really drive engagement on TikTok, whereas on Instagram I can show my personality more. I think there is a little bit of overlap on both platforms, but that's some really good insight. What do you feel like mainly differs like in your content specifically from TikTok to Instagram? You mentioned, you know, connecting to people's stories and DMs in that, but what else is kind of different between the two platforms?
Yeah, I've noticed personally, and obviously this is one person's experience, but you know, so specifically around fashion content, I would say with TikTok, like I said, watch time, saves, shares, those are really, really important, it seems like, to the TikTok algorithm. And so there really has to be a ton of value provided in almost every single video on TikTok, in my experience, in order for it to get traction. So for example, when I post on TikTok, it almost always is going to be multiple ideas or multiple items that someone should look into or things like that. If I just post here's a simple outfit of the day on TikTok, I don't tend to get a ton of traction for whatever reason. Some creators do. There are some especially bigger creators that will post one single outfit of the day and get, you know, millions of views, and that just hasn't necessarily been the case for me. Whereas on Instagram, I do think there's an opportunity for some more of that simple and quick content does seem to perform okay on Instagram, because like I think if you post, you know, TikTok obviously has trended towards longer form content lately as well, with over a minute for like the creator fund and some of those different kinds of things. Whereas Instagram, I still think has those, you know, 7-second reels can be really, really good things. And those quicker digesting things, I think, is how people seem to consume content on Instagram a little bit more. And so generally it's longer videos and heavier value on TikTok versus shorter videos and, you know, sometimes just more fun or lighthearted on Instagram. With that being said, I still cross post probably like 4 times a week, where I get the platforms get the same content, but then occasionally, like a couple of other times a week, I'll do a platform specific post as well.
Yeah. So, David, I want this show to be an opportunity for people who are looking to grow, who are wanting to learn how to, grow on social media, to listen to some inspiration and kind of feel like, hey, I can possibly do that too. So when you were, in the initial phases, obviously you already kind of had a niche. You already kind of had an idea of what you wanted to post about. But a lot of people want to grow just like posting lifestyle stuff, and they want to grow, and I've noticed that some of your content has kind of branched into a little bit of fitness and a little bit more of like your personality, like you mentioned on Instagram. Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about niche or niche, because I think that that's something that a lot of people worry about. They don't know what to post about. They want to grow, but they're not 100% sure. How important do you think that is? And how important do you think that was for you beginning with men's simple fashion content?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I wrestle with all the time. As you mentioned, I have started to kind of branch into some of those other things, and part of that is out of a place of a desire to share more of myself, and part of it is out of a place of, man, coming up with new fashion specific stuff 365 days a year is just, it's a lot of volume, and it's a lot of me like talking and coming up with new things. And sometimes ideas are good and sometimes they're not, but just sharing your life is generally a good thing. I will say, as far as niche versus, sharing just everything you in your life, all of those kinds of things. Early on, I wish I knew who this video was from, because I think about it all the time, and I don't have any clue who to attribute it to, but I saw something that said, for content to be engaging, it needs to be one of three things, and that's inspirational, aspirational, or educational. And so you kind of have to, honestly, I have to be honest with myself, had to be honest with myself early on. I don't live the most aspirational life. We live in a townhouse in a very suburban area. I'm not like, this handsome dude who lives in a huge apartment in New York City or anything like that. And so some people obviously, like we're very blessed, very fortunate to do what we do for a living and all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, if you just looked at my everyday life, you wouldn't be like, man, that dude is living, and it's just this crazy thing. And so aspirational was kind of, off the table to some degree. Inspirational as far as like, hitting you with awesome quotes or things that are going to make you want to go and like change your life. And I guess to some degree, the fashion stuff does hit that vein, and like, man, I've gotten really sloppy with things and I want to upgrade, and so I'm inspired to go do this. But I didn't necessarily see myself as strongly there. And so the third one for me was educational. And so that was where I leaned heavy early on. And at the end of the day, I did test a few times early on, sharing more of my life and those kinds of things. And I just didn't get the same engagement on those that I did on the educational posts. And so ultimately, I probably shied away from sharing as much of my life as I should have or could have early on in the name of success. And that's just kind of a decision that I think you have to make. Very few people, you see these massive creators who have blown up just sharing their life. I like somebody like Alex Earl, or she's obviously like the cliche, but they've been hammering this for a really, really long time. And it seems like, oh man, they have 10 million followers and this is crazy, but like it's been years over years over years of building and stacking that. I've been fortunate to build an audience that's fairly sizable in a shorter period of time. If I had just leaned into posting personal content all the time, I don't think I would be where I am today. That's not to say that somebody can't be, or that it's not possible for everybody, but you just have to kind of consider those ideas. If your life is super aspirational and you live in a really cool place and you're the most beautiful person of all time, you can post mostly your life and you may blow up, or you may not. And so you do just kind of have to weigh, what are my goals here? What is important to me? What do I enjoy doing? That's obviously a huge component as well, which is part of why I've kind of started to incorporate some other content, because I just like making content around fitness and wellness and some of those things. And so my audience gets to see those things because I guess I've earned their follow in a different way. And so now I get to impose myself how I want to. But it is like, you have to decide, what are your goals here? Is it fun? Is it to make it a business or monetize? And what am I going to be able to continue to show up doing for not 10 days, not a month, not a year, but like 10 years? And how do you make this sustainable if that's something that you desire?
Wow. You're dropping fire. That was a lot of wisdom right there. I really enjoyed that. I think you're totally right. I think initially, and I ask because I was genuinely curious to hear kind of your take, but you said pretty much what I expected about initially. It's important to kind of narrow in and hone in on what it is that like your content is going to be focused on. I remember as a follower of yourself, I remember when I first saw your account it came across my For You page on TikTok. I saw a really good actionable men's fashion tip. I was looking to level up my game a little bit, decide like what I wanted to, wear more of, because I feel like I was kind of stuck in like the t-shirt, jeans, pretty basic type of thing. And I noticed that you had like some collared shirts, some button ups, a little bit of, sweaters, some different styles. And so I went to your account and immediately there was a ton of content that was digestible for me that suited exactly, that was aligned with that video. Whereas if I had initially clicked on your account and gone there and you were talking about preparing for a half marathon along with this new drink that you were consuming and also a few things about, some shirts that you were trying, I may not have been as inclined to follow because I didn't know you personally. But now that you have grown, I think that's some good insight too, to note that after a little bit of growth, you can start to impose yourself. I like that, the way that you said that, with some things that are, about you, some things that are like more personal. And I, being a follower, I enjoy it now. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's cool that he's doing that. And you're a little bit more invested in your personal life. The followers are a little bit more invested in what else is going on in life. And so you're interested to kind of see that. So that's some really great insight.
I think one thing that I maybe was surprised by, but makes sense when you just think about the volume numbers, is I get unfollowed like 1,000 times a week or more. And so I guarantee that anytime I have posted a fitness related one or something like that, there has been someone who's seen it and been like, who is this person that I followed off of one random viral TikTok or viral reel, click into my account, unfollow, and they're gone. And so you do have to be prepared, I think, for, that people can follow me or unfollow me, and that's okay. And so but I've always kind of thought of the mindset of, if someone unfollowing me is probably a good thing, because that's one more person who wasn't going to engage with my content, who wasn't the type of person that I was, that going to connect with or reach. And so ultimately it's kind of refining that community that you do have. But like you said, I think that, we've all seen those TikTok or Instagram accounts that have one video with like 10 million views about one specific thing, and their next like 50 videos are about a bunch of other random stuff, and they all have like 400 views. And I think that exactly ties in with what you're saying of building up a platform of value that, I'll have people that I see follow, and then I'll be like, have 50 likes from one person all on all of my different videos. And so I know that like sometimes and I've done the same thing. You see somebody, you follow them, and then you go deep dive everything, and you're like, man, there's a lot of good stuff here. And so the more specific you are, the more of that you're going to get. I do think there's a miss as far, or, the thing that you miss when you're providing more value or educational based content is that like raving fan of me as a human being. And there's always this balance of like, do these people like me, or do they like what I have to offer them? And so over time, I think you build more of that trust with them, and you build more of that connection, and hopefully they do like you as a person as well. But at the end of the day, it's a human connection that isn't on a super deep level. And so there always is going to be this like value exchange that you have to consider.
Absolutely. I want to branch out a little bit from Instagram and TikTok. Are you on any other social media platforms very heavily?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I posted 3 YouTube videos at the beginning of last year. I realized it took a ton of my time, and it obviously is a much slower trajectory. That is something that I do desire long term, but the time to payoff ratio was not there a year ago when I was starting. And so I've focused most of my attention on TikTok and Instagram. I do have Pinterest, and I share a lot of outfit ideas, things like that on Pinterest. And then I also do have a blog and website that I post a weekly blog and share a weekly newsletter from some of that content as well. But those are my Instagram, TikTok, and website and newsletter are my main focuses at the moment.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. You know, YouTube, I totally get you there. It is a long game. YouTube is a long game. You gotta really dedicate, you know, hours to editing and making those videos really stand out. There's a lot of stuff in there, so I totally get that. But your blog and your newsletter, I want you to talk about that a little bit, because although, you know, when you think social media, initially you go to Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you know, maybe X and Twitter, LinkedIn, that type of thing. But I do think that like blogs are still very relevant in today's day and age. And I also think that a newsletter is something I don't know if it's like becoming super popular, but I feel like I've subscribed to so many newsletters. My email inbox is always just full of all these newsletters, and I enjoy them. I read them, and I think they're really cool. So just tell me, like, what got you into the blog and the newsletter, and then talk about those a little bit.
Yeah. Well, as you can probably tell through just our chat here, I'm a bit long-winded. And so part of it was just like I have a lot to say sometimes, and confining things to a 30-minute or 30-second or 60-second window on short-form video content, I just had more that I wanted to share. And so part of it is fun. It's a fun outlet to get to, you know, hammer out 2,000 words about something really specific in simple men's fashion, honestly, still. And so that was a part of it. Part of it, honestly, stemmed from all of the noise and chatter around TikTok ban and all of those kinds of things. And at the end of the day, I don't have any control over those platforms. I don't have control around how they change the algorithm. I don't have control around how, you know, if they even continue to exist forever or not. And so from more of honestly a business-minded standpoint, there is a desire to, this isn't the lightest way to say it, but own some of your followers and have that like specific, have those people on my list and be able to reach them even if everything else in the world shut down. And so that was part of the desire, was truly just another outlet, another place to be creative that I enjoy sharing on, but also to have that. And I also just heard from some friends who do have newsletters or do enjoy consuming newsletter content that they thought that my content would be helpful to them in newsletter form. And I try to keep it extremely simple because I've subscribed to a variety of different newsletters. My all-time favorite newsletter is the one from James Clear, and it's about a 2-minute read every single Thursday, and it is so simple. And so that was my desire with mine as well, was I really give like one outfit idea. I share a couple of pieces of content that I've either shared on the blog or on social media that I think might be helpful, and then a few links for outfits, so that if you were like, man, I want to upgrade my style, this is your kind of one-stop shop where every week you could buy a new outfit for a specific occasion, and it's all right there and ready in your inbox. And so that's been really helpful. Obviously, again, it's a slow build compared to viral short form content, and I have been fortunate to be able to leverage an existing audience into that platform, but it still has been a very slow build. And so again, you just have to weigh it out. And it's something, writing a blog is something that I enjoy, that I think I could see myself doing for a long period of time. And so I knew that that was something that was worth committing to. But it's not like, you know, for example, I'll get 30 clicks on a link on a blog, and I might, when I post something on my Instagram story, get 500. And so the trade-off in the short run isn't necessarily there, but the hope is that by building a more engaged audience and having just another connection point, that it's just a way to kind of diversify the portfolio of my business, I guess.
Yeah. You know, you've talked about your Instagram, your TikTok, now your newsletter and your blog. It seems like for maybe a new creator, a lot. They might look and go, oh my goodness, like how do you stay on top of it all? So that's my question. How do you stay on top of it all and stay consistent?
That's a great question. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's, I'll miss a day or two of Instagram or TikTok, or I'll be scrambling to get a newsletter ready at the last minute. I have been very fortunate in the fact that we are solopreneur entrepreneurs, and also that our business is seasonal. We shoot about 90% of our weddings over the summer months, and my wife is able to take on a lot of the administrative load with our photography business. And so I am fortunate in that I do have more free time than the average person in the off season in particular, that I've been able to dedicate to that. But ultimately it's been, like I said, kind of a slow build. It started out like post on TikTok every single day, and that was my only priority. And then it was like add Instagram in, and then it was like, hey, I think we have time to like write a blog and do a newsletter and do some of these things. And if I had tried to start all of it early on, I think probably none of it would be happening. And so that was ultimately the decision that I had to make around YouTube, was that it was too much to take on at the time. And so I had to push it off until a later time. And so I do think, building up you will get faster over time as a new creator with your post-processing and all of those different things, and more time will free up. And so just because like at first it probably took me an hour to make a TikTok, and now I could make one in 10 minutes if I have everything like canned and ready to go. And so I think just building slowly into all of those things instead of trying to do it all at once is important.
Yeah, I think that's great insight. I think kind of growing, with yourself and with your abilities and skills, as you grow, you can take on a little bit more and do that. And I think that's really smart of you and candid of you to share that, at first YouTube like just wasn't in the cards. And maybe as you keep growing and as you continue to build those skills as well as your portfolio, you go, oh, I do have a little bit more time for YouTube, and I can maybe invest a little bit more time and energy into trying that out at some other, future date. But
totally. And, the other thing that I will say is not comparing your like day one to somebody else's, day 700. And I haven't done any of this yet, but you see these creators who are putting out just insane volume of content, and you're like, man, if I'm not doing that, I'm failing. And the reality is they have 5 people that work for them or they're outsourcing or doing different things. And so there are ways to go about creating a higher volume. The reality is that with more success, more of those opportunities are going to open up to bring some of that stuff on. And so you do just kind of have to stay in your lane and realize that you're one person, and you can only do what you can with excellence instead of adding a bunch of stuff on and doing it all at like a mediocre level.
Do you feel like being a solopreneur, you work with your wife, so that's awesome. That allows you to not necessarily be alone all the time. But I think there are creators who, although you're speaking to thousands of people potentially every day, you feel a little bit isolated. So like, how have you dealt with that? And what advice might you give to somebody who is trying to become a creator?
That's a great question. I would say that the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is just like your community. And obviously that I think can look 2 different ways. For me, I am really involved in my church, and we have a community group that meets every single Monday night. And I have those friends and those guys in my life who are there for me anytime that I need them. And so that's going to be step 1 as you like start to build and start from zero, is who are the people who are already around you? How can you invite them in? It's obviously vulnerable. Posting on social media is like, I saw something the other day that was talking about how it's super, super cringe until it's not. And that was so true for me. Like at first when I had like 500 followers and I was posting men's fashion content every single day, it felt so silly. And now everyone that I talk to is like, this is such a cool thing. And it's like, yeah, you weren't saying that at first. And so you do have to have those people in your life that you can bring with you on the journey that are going to root you on and support you no matter what. And for me, that's like my church community, but a lot of people, maybe it's a run club, or maybe it's, somebody that you know from the gym or from a book club or different, whoever it is. You have to find those people that can kind of speak into your life early on. Over time, what is neat is there is this huge like community of creators, and whatever your niche or space is, there are all these other people who are feeling and experiencing a lot of the same things you are. And unfortunately, I live, like I said, in the suburban Northwest, and there are not a lot of other men's fashion creators who live near me, but definitely have made some awesome connections virtually with creators. We're actually headed to New York next month, and so I'm hoping to connect in person with a few of those people as well. And so there is awesome community. The human connection part of it is what I love the most, what I really enjoy. And so I'm always asking, like, even my followers, just like hit me in the DMs or things like that, just so that I can like talk to people, because it is definitely a bit lonely. And so, yeah, I think just you do have to be proactive about it. There is not going to be, nobody's going to come to you and be like, hey, you seem like you need community. You seem like you're lonely. Let me just press in and do this for you. At the end of the day, you have to like, it's your responsibility, and you kind of have to take ownership of that for yourself and know like that yeah, you have to figure out a way to bring that to yourself, whether it's through other creators, people in your own life, or, you know, random strangers that you happen to meet on the internet.
Yeah, totally. Continuing on that vein of, you know, maybe the more difficult side of social media, you mentioned at the beginning, you know, being somebody who's posting with 500 followers, men's fashionable content might seem a little bit cringe. And at times, I'm sure you have, I mean, especially with your scale now of having thousands of followers, you get negative comments. You get people who are going to say things. How do you deal with that? And what would your advice be to somebody who is either afraid of that or dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't deal with it well at first, honestly. Probably not the first month, because nobody was seeing what I was posting the first month, but like the second month when I started to get a bit more traction, it was brutal. And I had a different haircut at the time. I don't know if you followed me before I like got my haircut, but it used to like go across the front of my head, and I'd been thinking about getting it cut for like years. But I just had never bit the bullet. I'd had the same hairstyle for like 10 years. And one of my videos just got absolutely hammered for specifically like some people liked the content and other people were just there to like be mean about my hair. And so that was honestly like the impetus I needed to like get it cut the way that I have it now. And I love it. I'm like so glad that I made the change. And so sometimes the meanness from TikTok, from social media, can push you into positive change. But again, you know, two things helped. I've harped on this over and over again. Community, having people who are in your life who can speak truth about you and tell you who they know you are, even though these strangers on the internet who have no clue who you are saying mean things about you, is super important. And then the other thing is just I've kind of got this thought exercise where, like, you know, I'm putting myself out there, and these people are like living in their mom's basement just commenting mean things on the internet. And so you almost do like have to just put those in perspective. I have no idea who the people are who are commenting, but like that's who they are in my mind. And really, like, whether it's, you know, a literal mom's basement or a figurative mom's basement, if somebody is willing to just go out there and put super, super mean and hurtful things on the internet, they're in a bad spot. And so they're not probably the type of person that I desire to speak into my life anyways. And so you do just have to kind of try to keep that in perspective of like, who are these people? Their opinion doesn't mean anything. And it is this strange, it's kind of what I touched on earlier on TikTok. It's this strange balance where like some of my most viral videos are the ones where I just got clobbered the most. And so you're like, oh, this is so great. I've got 1 million views and I'm getting all these followers and this is awesome. But it's because everyone hates me. And so there is this like strange balance that comes along with the territory. And, you know, yeah, you have to be willing to take it to some degree. And it's part of putting yourself out there, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was just like everyone loved you for who you are and they were just always encouraging, but that's just not the nature of TikTok and social media at the moment. So
no, I totally get that. I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing some of that stuff, and and I think it will be a positive. We will have a positive impact on some creators who are dealing with that or who are afraid. I think your analogy of just kind of relating them to, you know, if they're saying those things, chances are they're not in a great place themselves. And the other thing is maybe they are and they're happy people or whatever, but they're behind a 5-inch screen. Yeah. And, you know, studies have shown that like if they had the chance, they would never say that to their face. You would sure. never say the same things that you would say to the face. And so don't take it personally, you know, and I think that's good advice. And maybe, like you said, it might even have a positive impact, like you shared with your hair. So I think that's kind of funny and a cool little example.
Sometimes a lot of times I'll just leave it. Sometimes if it's really mean, I'll delete the comments, whatever. Occasionally, if I'm feeling really snarky, I'll comment something back, which I always try to like just be a overwhelmingly positive presence. And like, that is always my goal. But occasionally I'll hit back, and usually it doesn't make me feel any better. What does sometimes make me feel better is when I comment back something like, hope your day gets better, something like that. And people will comment back to that and be like, I'm so sorry. I'm having a terrible day. Shouldn't have taken it out on you, And so a lot of the times it does come down to, it's nothing personal. It's just like circumstances that they're experiencing are impacting the way they're seeing the world, just like my circumstances impact that for me. And so you just have to take it all with a grain of salt.
Absolutely. And props to you for spreading a bit of positivity, whether it be through your content or responding to those people and just shooting them with a, hey, hope you're having a good day. Hope you have a good day. And I think that's a cool little nugget of wisdom there. Given what you know from social media today, what would be your advice for somebody who is wanting to get on social media? They want to build a personal brand. They want to be known for something. They want to build a business, an extra income, whatever that may be. And they're at zero right now. What advice would you give them?
I saw a stat the other day that like the creator economy by the year 2027 is supposed to be $500 billion. And so like literally like I think that's $500 billion. And so like there's all of this money to be made, and it has definitely, that always is going to inform some of the decisions that you make, but it can't be your driving factor. It has to be a perk behind what you're doing at best, and maybe something that you try to completely ignore, especially when you're just starting. At the end of the day, if you don't like what you're talking about, if you don't like what you're doing on a fairly deep level, you're going to get chewed up and spit out by the mean people on the internet, by the effort level that it takes to continue to grow and build. And so it does have to be something that you enjoy and love and just want to do in general. Like if somebody if you knew that you were never going to make $1 on it, would you still do it? And so that has to kind of be part of the focus. And then, like I said a little bit earlier, I do think there's just a longevity piece. Like, what is something that, everyone's journey is a little bit different. I've been fortunate to, have about 200,000 followers in, 15 months, which is more than I ever could have dreamed of or imagined. There are some amazing, amazing creators who have been doing this for 10, 15 years, who maybe have the exact same number of followers that I do. Their communities are deep. They have earned every single one of those followers from when Instagram was just like you found people on the Explore page or whatever. And so, but their journey has been completely different than mine. And that doesn't mean mine is better or theirs is better. It's just that it's different. And they have been so committed to that process. And so I do think trying to take the long view as much as possible, realizing that none of this is that serious. And it's just, have fun, enjoy what you're doing. And try to just create something meaningful for that hopefully other people will enjoy, but ultimately that makes you happy. I think that we as humans are designed to be creative, and a lot of us just consume all the time. And so whether it's TikTok or, my wife and I were talking about like making sourdough bread or building something in your backyard or whatever, like finding the platform with which you can be creative and not just consume all the time, but start to put some awesome positive things out into the world, I think is huge. And so whatever that looks like for you, make sure that it's something that you enjoy, make sure it's something that you love. And I think that a lot of the times the metrics will follow that, whether it's followers or likes or views or all those kinds of things. But even if they don't, just continuing to push and do that if it's something that you enjoy.
David, that's great advice. Last thing I wanted to say, I think the name David James Elliott could be a clothing brand. And I think that's something that I think that like you are gifted with a really good name to be just like the next, Louis Vuitton or whatever it may be, or Marc Jacobs, one of these brands that just like, wow, that's somewhere, Ralph Lauren, that's somewhere that I would buy some clothes. So
it's funny because I realized that David James Elliott is probably how most people like think that I'm addressed or people know me, but like no one has ever used my middle name in real life. It's just that, at the end of the day, David Elliott was taken when I was starting my account and platform, and I took inspiration from my friend Parker York Smith, who is another awesome men's fashion creator, and he had his full name, and so I was like, well, I need something that hasn't been taken, and it wasn't taken, but now maybe it's part of the brand and something that ultimately will have a life of its own someday.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being willing to jump on this call today and talk about social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Isaac.